What's your love language? That's a question from Gary Chapman, and it's one that millions of couples have answered. But sometimes it seems as if a relationship is destined to fall apart. And to those couples, Gary Chapman has a question as well.
Many people know Gary Chapman as America's most beloved marriage counselor. He's also the author of the New York Times bestseller, The 5 Love Languages. For 35 years, Gary has helped thousands of couples heal their relationships. He says if your marriage is struggling, or even if it's near the breaking point, there's still hope. In his new book, One More Try, Gary tells you what to do to save your marriage.
Dr. Gary Chapman is here with us again. And Dr. Chapman, we welcome you back to the
Thank you,
700
Terry.
Club. It's great to have you with us. Most people, I think, have points in their marriage where they struggle a little bit. And when people really get in a hard place, usually they feel like it's the other guy's fault. Is that common?
You know, it is common because all of us feel like our position, our thoughts, our behavior, it's all right.
I'm the righteous one,
if
right?
there is a problem, it's you.
So when people come to you, and so many people have read your books over the years, how do you move them from that place to considering the fact that maybe there are some things in their own thought process, their own actions, their own way of living that need changing?
Well, you know, if they're believers, Jesus made it very clear. First of all, you get this log out of your own eye.
Yeah. Oh.
Then you can see how to get the speck out of the other person's eye. He didn't say there's nothing wrong with them, leave them alone.
Yeah.
No, he just said, first of all, you deal with your own failures, and then you can process the problems in the other person.
When people come to you, often they come, I'm sure, as they do to many marriage counselors, they're at the end of their rope. They feel like they've given it what they're willing to give, and they want out of the discomfort of having to work through some of these things. How do you help people get to the place where they say, I'm willing to try to reconcile this? Because that's the beginning, isn't it?
It is. Well, Terry, you know, I'm very empathetic with those people because I know what it's like to be married and feel like you married the wrong person.
Did you go through that?
We did. Carolyn and I did in the early years of our marriage. And you really feel like there's no good way out of this.
So what did you guys do?
Well, for us, it was a long journey, and it was step by step, learning a little bit here and a little bit there. But we were both committed to marriage, and we were both committed to God. And when you have that kind of foundation, then you're going to find answers. You're going to walk with God and find answers. But what I say to people when they come really is, I understand, first of all, how you could get to the place where you have no hope. So why don't you go on my hope for a while? Let's just operate on my hope, because I work with a lot of couples. I've seen a lot of marriages restored. So let's operate on my hope. And I never ask people, do you want to work on your marriage? Because they've lost the want to.
Yes.
I ask, will you work on your marriage? I understand.
They're two different things.
That's right.
Yeah.
The emotions are not pushing you to do this, but will you work on the marriage? And if you will, then we can begin to take some steps that will lead you in the right direction.
Yeah. You mentioned that for you and Carolyn, it was a long journey. It is the process for everyone, isn't it?
It is. There's no magic wand that can be waved and the marriage is fine.
Yeah.
Now, obviously, our relationship with God is extremely important. And if we're walking away from God, we've got to turn around. We've got to come back to God. And our relationship with God and the help of the Holy Spirit will help us implement those things. Yeah. But we didn't get to the point of despair overnight. And we're not going to get back to the point of enjoying life with each other overnight.
When should people seek help if they're struggling in their marriages? I think sometimes we get to that place where we wait until we stop wanting God to fix it or change us or even find an answer.
You know, the earlier the better.
Yeah.
That's one reason I say to young couples who are getting married, in the first year of your marriage, if you run into something you're not able to solve, call a pastor, go see an older friend and share the struggle with them. You're not going to have any problems that other people haven't had similar problems. And the earlier you reach out, the earlier you're going to find an answer.
I'm just going to ask you this, even though I know I'll probably get some flack about this from people, but why do men seem to have such a struggle with getting help from someone?
Yeah. You know, I think it's the idea that we want to do it ourselves. You know, we're not going to ask somebody how to get there. Of course, now we've got Google, you know, that can help us get there. But we're not going to ask questions. We're going to do it ourselves. There's just something about the ego of men that want to do it ourselves. The reality is all of us need help. None of us can live life alone. We need the help of others. We were designed to live in community. And marriage is designed to be the most intimate of all relationships. And because of that intimacy, the desire for intimacy, we have to have help because there are things that we don't understand about each other. And we reach out for help, we find help, and we learn how to work together.
And sometimes there are things we don't even understand about ourselves. You know, it seems like a common thing that we go through as human beings is that the grass is always greener somewhere else. And that's not reality. We take our problems with us if we don't solve them, right?
Yeah, and you know, the research indicates that the divorce rate in second marriages is higher than the divorce rate in first marriages.
Is that right?
The answer is not running, the answer is learning how to love the person to whom you're now married.
Well, no one gets married thinking, gee, I kind of hope this works, but if it doesn't, you know, there's always divorce. I'm sure there are some people who do, but what happens to people's dreams? We hear about the honeymoon phase early on in marriage, but how do we lose what was so enticing to us in the beginning?
Well, you know, the in-love experience where you're pushed along with these euphoric feelings has an average lifespan of 2 years.
Is that right?
We all come down off the high. Some a little longer, some a little less. Average 2 years, we come down off the high. Now, I say, let's be glad we come down off the high. Because if we didn't, you'd have to close down business, industry, church, education. You can't get anything done when you're in love. You know, being in love is next door to being insane.
They are pretty close.
We come down off the high, but when we come down, then we begin to identify the things in the other person that irritate us. And then we begin to argue and we say hurtful things to each other. And after a while, we're wondering, why did we get married? We don't even like each other. But it's a normal phase. And I try to say to people, before you get married, please understand you will come down off the high and you will have to work through the differences. And if you understand that, it's much easier.
And there's something good on the other side. You write in the book about the deepest what do you call it, the deepest pit, loneliness. Talk about that a little bit.
Well, I think in a marriage, you can become extremely lonely if you haven't learned how to share life intellectually and emotionally and spiritually and physically and socially, which is what intimacy is all about. If you haven't learned that, you can become extremely lonely when you lead independent lives. And the loneliness is one of the deepest hurts of the human heart because we were designed. You know, God said it's not good for man to be alone. The word means cut off or isolated. And God's answer to that isolation was the institution of marriage, designed of God to be the most intimate of all human relationships. And when we have it, it's extremely wonderful.
And it can be learned.
And it can be learned,
if we're
absolutely.
Willing, right?
Absolutely.
If we're willing. Well, if your marriage is in trouble or you know someone whose is, I want to share with you Dr. Gary's book. It's called One More Try. Great title. What to do when your marriage is falling apart. You can pick up a copy wherever books are sold. It's a great introduction to finding some lifelong answers for you and the person that you love. Dr. Chapman, thank you for being with us today.
Well, thank you,
always
Terry.
Have something wonderful
Thank you.
to share.
Enjoy being with you.